Hello guys. So Apollo is here, but it is currently without the aspect, which is unfortunate. It's kind of the main thing that is going to affect me, at least. Like, Apollo will just be fun, and I will definitely try to play him as much as I can. That being said, how good is he really going to be in solo? Without the aspect. I even had some ideas for builds and stuff for solo, but it requires the aspect. Just have to wait and see. Because it's probably going to be on Friday, I guess. Like it was with Kali. Was his aspect. The aspect is you can actually see it in practice mode and toggle it on, but the aspect is essentially that his 2 becomes a shield, his and his 1 scales with HP. And then instead of audacity stacks hitting, when you get 10 stacks, you get attack speed. Instead, on the aspect, it gives him another one of his 1s, so he can stack up to 3 1s. So if you can go for a health build, stack up the damage on the 1 and use it 3 times, that sounds pretty good. It's generally pretty low damage, I will say, because it's only 15% of your health from items specifically. Ability power, not really, because he has 1 damaging ability, being his 1, and that only scales with HP. So that wouldn't really be worth it. That would only be for the ultimate then. So it is meant to be a tank Apollo build. Or an aspect, I should say. Like a frontline aspect. Question is just what type of build is actually good on it. The aspect is what made him interesting to me coming out here. So it's a bit unfortunate that it's not here on release, but probably should have expected that considering they did the same thing with Kali. Or even Acne, I guess. Yeah, up to 3 people can jump in his ult now. That's just standard. That's not an aspect thing either, so that's just a +1. I think it's the only +1 he got. But it costs more mana. The more people in there, the more it costs. But it's still very good. But I don't think you can go from solo to duo lane with that. That's optimistic, because that's going to be expensive. Maybe you can. Maybe you're just under-tuned at the moment, but I don't think you should be able to do that if you have 2 people inside. Alone you should be able to, but not with 2 people in. Because it gets very expensive. It goes from 5, it starts at 5, right? If you're just alone, it's 5% mana cost every second. If it's 1, it goes up by 5 every time there's a new person in. So it doubles and triples. Goes up with 5 with each person. Like, so if you have 3 people in there, 15% mana going every second, you're not gonna make it from solo to duo. You're gonna make it to like mid. Ugh. Which I think is the most balanced way to do it. Because what's the point? If you can't go from a lane to another lane, that kind of sucks, but... There's no up cost when 3 people ride? It's just 2, okay. I was just looking at the aspect, so I guess it's not final yet. Before the stream, I checked him in the practice mode where you can see the aspect. But okay, I mean, that means it's 10%. Yeah, not sure. We'll just have to wait and see what happens when it comes out, but at least it's going to be 10%. If it's 10%, you might be able to make it to duo. I'm not really too sure. I'm not sure how fast it's going to be on the Smite 2 map compared to the Smite 1 map. But at least personally, I don't think you should be able to go from solo to duo. If you have, 3 people in. That's a bit much. And way too powerful. For like split pushing strategies and just overall rotation power. Yeah, I like Apollo as well. It's one of my favorites. Very excited that he's finally here. Yeah, 8-minute queue. I expected as much on a full reset. Like I basically download the patch and instantly open the game. You know, I didn't even expect to be able to queue. Usually it takes like what 30 minutes for rank to be up. Do you think SR numbers are cooked? Yeah, they are. They definitely are. But I mean, it's been like that for a while though now, right? Like it's never gonna feel good with the amount of player numbers at the moment. Damn, I'm gonna pause until it stops. Not a bad fish queue though. At least I know all the names. Not sure why they did a soft reset with a big constant upgrade or a big change. Yeah, I do think the soft reset was bad. Yeah, bitch. I haven't seen him in a while. I thought he quit. Maybe he just got suspended. I don't know. Well, if I'm playing this this guy, let's get this guy out.
Select your god.
Get soft reset if you get a big map changes or something, but sure the soft reset just makes the matchmaking worse because you're resetting past data. I think it's bad because of the low player numbers. Like, it may sound weird, but I legitimately think that's the only problem. The problem is so many... I mean, it's also the fact that I think that the rank system is bad. Like, why is it uncapped? There should absolutely be a cap. But the people that... Like, there is such a big skill difference between the people that are stuck in 4K and the people that are above, like, 5 and 6K. Like, a massive skill difference. So when you, like, soft reset anyone to go down to 4K if you're above 4K, dude, it's gonna be an insane skill difference just around 4K then. It doesn't make any sense to me. If you're gonna reset people, make the ones that were 4K maybe down to 2K. You know, like soft reset everyone. Why are we soft resetting only the people who are like so good to the point where they're just going past the cap basically? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Like you're completely screwing up the matchmaking by doing that. Hello, Kami. Yeah, I'm pretty excited for Apollo, but I did start the stream and then I realized that the aspect obviously isn't in yet, which does make me sad because that's kind of what I wanted to play around with. But I should have expected that, considering we did the same thing with the last release god. So I assume that the aspect is going to be on Friday, like it was with Guan.
Apollo.
So we will see. Damn, they really made me the only physical in this team. I was actually not planning on going very damaging on this Apollo, but oh well. Damn, they changed Baron's logo here, you see, I guess. Like, you can't see it. It says Baron. Right there. Surprisingly good first queue, I'm not gonna lie. Considering it also took 8 minutes. Yeah, the shark so big is in. I like the skin. A lot of people actually apparently didn't like the skin. I didn't realize, but I think for me it was my favorite Sobek skin. Voice pack, I do think you can argue that the pirate one is better, and the pirate one is more iconic, just like Swagni is. But I like that skin a lot. I always use that one. Do I really need beats just because they have Sobek? That is unfortunate. I don't want to get Sobek 2'd into. Excuse me, a Wheelix plug. Do I try like a tanky build still? Maybe I do. I don't want a Wheelix Chalk just to sit on me. I'll try a somewhat more tanky build in the beginning here. Well, I get used to him.
I'll take one of those.
The Warrior's Axe. I mean, you can still probably just do it like non-aspect Apollo solo, just because you still have the mess for some kind of tankiness, which is always kind of nice. He's always been one of the more tanky ADCs. We got the Australian one. Or the which one is that? Is that a skin I might not be familiar with them? I obviously stopped for a long time as well, so I might not actually know a lot of the skins. I only really know the iconic ones. Back when I used to play a lot. Like when I came back, I stopped caring about skins because there was just too many when I came back. I didn't really keep up with it. If a new one came out, like that looked cool, then yeah, sure. But
조용히 좀 해줘.
Name a god with more power. Name a god with more power. Name a god with more power. Name a god with more power.
oh yeah, Bip is here.
You cannot. You cannot. Name a god with more power. Name a god with more power.
Jesus Christ, I'm gonna have to mute him. Why is he so happy with the VGS system all of a sudden? Bip always was always so silent to me. Why is the man going crazy? Name a god. Of course he's level 2. Yo, could this one creep just get hit? There we go. Jesus Christ. Dude, they still haven't fixed the creeps.
Completed.
Like, how long are we gonna have the creeps just running, like, zigzagging? I can't imagine it being that hard to fix. Maybe I'm just stupid.
Enemies incoming left. I take my leave. You there? Yes. You. Good work. Cancel that.
I'll level my 1 here. Doubt I'm gonna need mess much if it's first level.
Chase the enemy. Attack the Titan. Attack the Titan. Attack the Titan.
Bip, shut up!
Attack the Titan. The Titan.
Damn it. They also did change the 1 animation, which I'm definitely getting used to. Why am I suddenly ahead in XP? I'm so confused. How did he hit level 2? But I'm ahead in XP? The orders are definitely a bit different as well, but I don't think they feel bad. Oops. Yeah, I mean...
Your middle tower is under
That's to
attack.
be expected. Ganking right here.
Ally has been slain.
That's great.
The rain shall wash them away.
Let's try it.
You there? Yes. Your middle tower is under attack.
Have a good time.
Your right tower is under attack.
Was not the kill I was looking for, but I'll take it. Yeah, that shit's still mana hungry.
You there? Yes. You. Good work. Okay.
That's too bad.
You there? Yes. You. Good work. Attack the Titan.
An enemy has been slain. And the rain shall wash
Oh yeah,
them
wait,
away.
did Anubis get a skin? Is that why?
Ally has been slain.
I don't know, what skin is even that? For some reason I thought it was the police skin, but
You there? Yes. You.
You know you
Good
cancel
work.
that.
maybe that's why he likes the voice pack.
Name a god with more power.
Cancel that.
More
조용히
zeal.
좀 해줘.
More wit than I. Oh, you cannot.
Your middle
You
tower is under
cannot.
attack.
It is a good voice pack though. Yeah, he also why does he have? I will never support the Chunk Warrior's axe because it just doesn't feel right to me. I can't. He's so good with Bluestone. Can't say it's bad though. Still just don't think Warrior's axe is ever really bad. Don't 20 damage.
On my way.
I got it back before they show up again. Question is, what the fuck do I build next? I'm gonna do what I used to do. I'm gonna go Pharaohs, and then just see what I build after that. Because I do want to be tanky. That was the whole point. I'm the only physical we have, but surely I can do enough damage, despite that. Do what? What is that?
Enemy ultimate now. Oh,
Your left tower
Oh,
is
what a
under
shame.
attack.
Help!
Good thing I backed, I guess.
Cancel that. Group up. Defend. Enemy spotted. Working hard is its own reward.
Completed.
enemy ultimate
There's not really much I can do here. Like, there's literally have Sobek and the Wheelix running around in the right jungle.
rain shall wash them away.
Okay. Enemies in the right jungle. Group up. 감사합니다.
Fabuloso.
He just has a big XP lead because of all the blue buff stuff. The Neo Vegana Destroyer. No, I always like the Apollo, but I don't do the split pushing stuff for the most part unless I have to. I like to think that I don't play it in a completely cancerous way. Is he any difference by one? He's +1. His aspect isn't in the game yet, but it's coming on Friday, which is very different. But otherwise, besides from that, his +1 is that he can carry multiple people in his chariot. which sounds broken on paper, but we'll have to see how it actually functions. People can jump in, it costs more mana, that's about it.
Enemies behind us. Wait. Attack.
Enemy has been slain.
Oh, it's a board. Dude, did that shit just stun me twice? The hell? Did I just block it from someone?
Your right tower is under attack.
We need a gold, actually.
Your team has destroyed a middle enemy tower.
Enemies in middle lane.
Retreat. Your right tower is under attack. Your team has destroyed the Gold Fury.
Hasta la vista, amigo.
Completed.
That sucks.
Oh, you move like a jaguar.
Well, I thought we could fight it if there was just one person coming in. Not bad, I guess. Good turfing. My problem with this build now is that Kins is just kind of dog shit. I would usually do the Braggies Kins and then just full tank build, because you can still do some good percentage damage. Always have a pretty decent consistent damage output. That's just not the case anymore. And Apollo obviously doesn't have split, or I guess hybrid
Enemies in the right
scaling, so there's also that.
On my way. The rain shall wash them away.
It's big. He does a lot of damage now. Chuck is just defensive. Yeah, he's just tank to me. Dude, he went all in on the physical defense.
Destroyed a right enemy tower. Your middle tower is under attack. Your middle tower is under attack.
Excuse me, man. Maybe I'm not the most known Apollo solo, but I started this shit, alright? The tank Apollo solo I did back in fucking season 1. Alright? I don't want to hear that shit. Man, a man quits for a few years and suddenly he destroys veganos, alright? I don't want to hear it. But yeah, the more people you carry in the ult, the more expensive it gets, mana-wise. That's pretty much the only difference.
Ultimate is ready.
Okay. Ultimate is ready.
Enemy missing.
Too bad. Left lane. Retreat left lane. Retreat. Group up.
Damn it.
An enemy has been slain.
Enemies have returned to base.
An ally has been slain.
Someone's low over there. They're both low.
The rain shall wash them away. Enemy ultimate down.
I'm going for it. You know it.
Enemy ultimate down.
next. I don't have a plan. I'm just building shit right now. I had a plan for the aspect. I did not have a plan for non-aspect Apollo. When my mom was barely in season 1, yeah, I believe you.
Ultimate attack the Gold Fury.
Attack! Enemies in right lane.
Oh.
Ally has been slain.
Your team has destroyed the Gold Fury.
Give up.
Maya Riffy.
You there! Yes! You! Good work!
It's kind of working out though. Yeah, I mean, I was somewhat young when I won the launch tournament. I was 18 at the time.
Cancel that.
Your
Save
middle
yourself.
tower.
Now I
is
feel
under
old.
attack.
Now I'm 29. Old and washed. I have 2 gods to play. There it is. Washed up fucking mechanics.
Falling back.
How's my back doing? Yeah, it died a long time ago. I'm Quasimodo now.
Ultimate is ready.
Actually, surprisingly well. Considering I've generally had a bad back my whole life, my back's actually doing quite alright. Like, it's just as bad as it's always been, but at least it's not worse, right?
Take left lane.
Your team has destroyed a left enemy tower.
I've been slack on my workouts, but I still stretch. That's the main thing. I stretch at home still,
Careful left.
and every day before bed.
Attack the fire tower.
Just get those protections.
Enemy spotted.
Maybe when I get XE I can damage him a bit, but this dude takes too many hits for me to even scratch him.
Set up an ambush here.
It is also a very tanky chalk. I definitely shouldn't mess him, because that makes me even tankier.
Okay. Enemy ultimate down.
Oh. Oh, yeah, of course.
Has destroyed the pyro. Your middle tower is under attack.
Rain shall wash them away.
Need healing. Be careful.
Yes. Retreat. Okay.
Completed.
I think I'll go for more defense here.
Help!
Let's go Nemean. It's been an absolute piece of shit.
Help! Help!
Defend middle lane. Mistakes happen.
An enemy has been slain. You're something else.
I have no reason to rotate.
Left lane.
I'm not rotating for a fucking Sopek.
On my way. Enemy spotted.
Rain shall wash them away. Double kill.
Can't even really do anything. I guess I'll help push mid.
Your team has destroyed the Gold Fury.
We should have just gone straight to fire, I think, but...
Destroyed a middle enemy tower.
I mean, considering his items, like, I'm definitely doing good damage. It's just really physical tanky.
Attack fire giant. Group up. Woo! Be careful, middle.
Enemies incoming
My
left.
way.
I take my
Follow
lead.
me.
Attack fire giant. Retreat left lane.
You there? Yes. You.
Let's just grab full Nemean. Now I'll just save my gold for my starter.
Romancer has arrived.
Did an Earth crit? I don't know actually. I haven't actually checked the patch
Enemy
notes.
missing. Enemy spotted. Set up an ambush here. Enemy spotted.
Say he like a baby.
Wait.
Your middle tower is under attack.
Ultimate is ready.
Your left tower is under attack.
Oh, okay.
Your work is
No wonder I'm completely out of mana. Someone else rode with me.
you there? Yes. You. Good
You're
work.
welcome.
I missed. So, is there any indicator on my end that someone jumps into my carriage? I need to look out for that.
Okay. Attack the fire giant. Set up an ambush here.
I did definitely KS that one on purpose. A little bit of shame, but not that much shame.
Your right tower is under attack.
Ultimate is down.
Ultimate is ready. Attack.
Enemy has been slain.
Attack the fire giant. Completed. Retreat. Follow me.
Bib!
Oh, he's the wrong team. I am sorry. The rain shall wash them away.
Attack fire giant. Yes. Ultimate is ready.
Team destroyed the fire giant.
Still need
Attack fire
a little bit of
giant
XP.
with Gold Fury.
조용히 좀 해줘.
Your middle tower is under attack. Your team has destroyed the pyromancer.
Take this jungle box.
Follow me. That's too bad.
Defend the Gold
Mistakes
Fury.
happen. Attack.
Enemy missing.
Oh, what a shame.
Your team has destroyed the Gold Fury.
I couldn't see a clear indicator outside of just looking at the map that someone is just following me. How's Apollo? He feels good. He definitely feels good, but this is also not the biggest, you know,
Enemies behind us.
test, I guess.
Enemy missing. Enemy missing.
Like Apollo solo going half tank.
Enemies in left lane. Help.
Help left lane.
Help! Your middle tower is under attack.
I think he's out.
On my way.
Hasta la
Enemy
vista,
ultimate
amigo!
down. I see.
Enemy has been slain.
Okay, man. I was mid-dash. Did no damage to me.
Back middle lane.
Attack left lane. You are weak.
Your team has destroyed a middle enemy base.
Dude, Beep is just always by himself getting chased. It's so funny.
Rain shall wash them away. Rain
Trying to eat nobody. Follow me.
enemy has been slain. Like a shot,
Oh, what a shame.
Your team has destroyed a left enemy.
Might be able to
Your
just
right
end with
tower
creeps.
is under attack.
Mistakes on my way.
Your right tower is under attack.
like a baby.
Help!
Yeah. Completed.
Come into my range if you want to be a pincushion.
But I'm pretty sure Apollo's gonna be quite strong.
Battle with more holes than you started with.
Will he be viable as a carry? I'm pretty sure. His kid is just good. Like he's just Apollo. Like, is he gonna be insane? That remains to be seen. But he is gonna be playable. I'm pretty sure. Broken or not, I'm not sure. It's hard to say after one game, and I obviously play him in solo as half tank, so it's not the greatest metric for him as an ADC, but he did feel good. Cupid ban. Is that just because of Apollo? I guess. I'm not gonna ban it just because I want to see it get Leela through. Pick Apollo tank. The aspect isn't out yet, but I tend to just play stuff tanky anyway. So don't ban is getting dodged. Okay. I mean, I'll just ban just to get this over with faster, though. If people are gonna dodge, they're gonna dodge.
Select your god.
Yeah, hopefully they fix it soon, DMBK. It does suck when you're the top 2 and you don't get your own role. Still feels weird. I don't know why it's still like that. And I don't even know if it's intended or not. It doesn't make any sense, at least. It might just be first pick that gets their own roll. It's intended? No, man. Why? Why would they do that in the first place? It doesn't make any sense. Why are we changing things that weren't broken in the first place? Why are they changing Merlin? You know what? Maybe that's a good idea. Let me take a look at the patch notes real fast. What even happened this patch? Do they have the patch notes on? Not on Steam. Smite 2. Let's check the website then. Alright. Let's pull this up. Do I have a window capture in this? Somewhere. Guess I don't. I gotta make a new one then. Whoops. That wasn't what I wanted to press. Go away. I think I have a video setting. I do somewhere. Wait, is that the one? No. This is the one. There we go. Wait, let me try to fix this bit. It's a bit too stretched. Why is it so large? Why is it so stretched? Shit. Oh well, whatever. You guys can see it. Okay, there we go. That's fine. That's Apollo. We got the new Sobic skins. And a bunch of other stuff. Cosmetics, boosters, arena stuff, Baron buffs, and I'm banning Missing guys. Wait, I ban Afro. My bad. I realized I have you, Rosa. It's just out of habit. I'm sorry. My bad. My bad. Alright, I got it, Paul, guys. No worries. Okay, back to this. A cooldown buff and wrap it up. That's pretty good. And a bit more damage on the ult. Okay, I don't think it's going to make a huge difference for Baron, but I do think it is, you know, ultimately a good buff for him. Aspect of Strife. Is that the aspect? Bonus code now applies when hitting jungle camps with the dash. Okay. That's interesting. Don't really think that's gonna make a difference. But's getting some buffs. Okay. Bit more damage on his 2 again. Interesting. Might see some return of some aspect bots then. Very small Loki buff. Okay. More scaling on the 1. Nuwa buffs. Ugh. I get it, but I don't need it. Emoji buff? Wait, Reverse Rebuke getting 120 all. I mean, to be fair, I do think 140-second cooldown is wild. So, fair enough. Down to 120. Makes sense. I don't like that the shield health is being buffed, though. Don't like shield buffs. Yeah, buff because all shieldless can't play her. I think that's one thing, but I also just feel like they're buffing the wrong things on her. I don't think the fact that she does too little shielding is the problem. I don't think that her ult cooldown necessarily... Like, I think her ult cooldown is actually okay. But yeah, by the way. Atlanta getting nerfed again. For the better. Definitely for the better. I do think the numbers on Aladdin are good, for sure, but I actually don't think that's the main problem on him. I think the main problem with Aladdin is that the 1 is bigger than it looks in terms of its hitbox. That needs to be fixed. I think the 3, just in general, is too big. I think they should make the circle smaller on the 3. Because that knockup is way too fucking easy to hit, and that's all his setup. At least make it a little bit skill-based. I think Aladdin's main issue is how easy it is to hit his stuff. For how powerful it is. Because I do think there should be a high-risk, high-reward gods, and Aladdin should be one of those gods. But right now he is not. It's way too easy to hit. I'll just kind of skip Merlin here. Decreased intelligence buff scaling. And increased the cooldown? Wait, what? Like, is this a nerf? Oh, it's a shift, they call it, I guess. Interesting. Yeah, I guess we'll see how this works out then. Some dot damage and Dragonfire. Okay. Alright, back to the game. Yeah, I see what you mean then. We'll see if it changes him in any way. Alright, different build this time. Let's see how this works. What do I start with then, actually? Maybe I just go Turfing first?
I'll take one of those.
Yeah, let's try this. Yeah, but I don't know if only running Aspect is a reason to change it. Like, look at Modred. Modred is absolute dog shit without his Aspect. He's only playable with it. He's so bad without the Aspect. So it's always a bit weird. Like, some aspects just generally end up being way better. Like, look at Acne as well right now. Like, why would you ever pick normal Acne over Aspect Acne? Even for mid, I would recommend going for Aspect as well. You just, damage output is just better. And then there's Hercules and Sopic aspects as well in the game, you know, it's weird. They very much vary on how good they are. can't believe I met Chuck twice now. Different people too.
Okay.
Both times as Apollo.
Enemies have returned to base.
Early power wish. I mean, the Sobek aspect is just weird, I think. I don't really see the logic behind it. You just gave him a worse version of the already existing ability. I think that's the weirdest part for me about it.
Enemies incoming.
Damn, my attack speed swapping suddenly completely screwed up my momentum there.
Way to go.
It going from into Audacity to out of it just completely threw me off. Then I couldn't hit shit anymore. It's an aspect chuck this time though. That should be easier to deal with. Or maybe not easier, but easier to potentially kill him. The thing is though, non-aspect Sobek is just better for solo. Because you want that setup from his one. The one is arguably his best ability. You don't want to lose that. If they want to make an aspect for Sobek, they have to do something else. You do not want to lose his one. But I can see, maybe I can kind of see where they came from. Maybe they wanted to give him something that was completely different, and so that he didn't have to rely on his one as much. But I think they just made the ability worse. I don't see any use for the one really.
The rain shall wash them away.
Attack middle lane.
Oh, I'm sad that didn't have.
An enemy has been slain.
An unintended destruction.
No, I even hit it. Aw, man.
Middle.
Enemy spotted!
The rain shall wash them away.
Did not get an assist though. How could this happen, man? The unsung hero. I took a tower shot.
Your middle tower is under attack. Your left tower is under attack.
Ooh.
To me.
Didn't think you saw me. Good thing Chuck wasn't level 5.
Attack left lane.
Enemy missing.
Chuck is fair is just kind of bad, I think. The problem is the item just doesn't give him anything he really wants on the base stats necessarily. Like I try to build it, it just feels like there's so many other things that are just way better. Alright, it's just back. Buy my shit.
Take this jungle buff.
That'll up this performance.
Oh, you move like a jaguar.
Enemies in right lane.
You
Oh,
got
what a shame.
thunderstruck.
Enemies in middle lane. I see.
I really don't like that Chuck skin.
Your middle tower is under attack.
Sad that the knock-up still caught me.
I'll attack.
Enemy ultimate down! On my way. Attack! Enemy ultimate down! Be careful, left.
Your left tower is under attack.
Oh, you move like a jaguar. Ooh.
Probably shouldn't stick around, to be honest.
Oh, you move like a jaguar. Ooh.
Dude, my team is just heavily winning here. I'm not doing shit.
Enemy has been
I'm gonna buy
slain.
Chalice. Go for an early XC
Have a good time.
in case he goes defense.
Enemies in middle lane.
Though I doubt that he's going to do that. Still. Should have gone Rage, actually. Chuck will not be able to deal with a crit ADC until way later.
Your right tower is under attack.
Enemy missing right.
Enemies have returned to base.
Enemies in middle lane. Goodbye. Enemy ultimate down. I see.
Your middle tower is under attack.
On my way.
Your middle tower is under attack.
Oh, very strong.
Your right tower is under attack.
Should have warned Thor. We could have both landed there. I love this god, me too. I think Apollo's fantastic. I'm having so much fun with him already.
Your right tower is under attack.
Like I've said this a lot in the last like 2 weeks or so while waiting for him, but like Apollo is top 3 in terms of my enjoyment of gods. I love Apollo. He's my favorite ADC. I've been playing him since the very beginning. Like when I played competitive originally, like the first god I kind of made a name with was Apollo, but like no one remembers that at this point. And it also wasn't as big of a splash as the Ibamana situation.
Wash them away.
But Apollo was the one I used to play. I was maining ADC.
An enemy has been slain.
I should have pressed my 8 HP left. Whew. Actually, all calculated.
Attack left lane.
Oh wait, people remember me as Chuck? I don't even remember me as Chuck.
Them away.
Enemies have returned.
Did I play Chuck? I never really liked Chuck very much. Whoops.
Ally has been slain.
Funny enough, now I do, because I think the aspect makes him so much more fun. God damn it. There's a chance that Aladdin is coming. I'm just gonna get out.
An enemy has been slain.
Yeah, Vamana makes sense. I mean, That's also what I remember. Like I'm never gonna forget it.
Your right tower is under attack.
Vamana, like it's just. I mean, the Vamana moment is how Smite has become such a big part of my life, right? I can never like make myself hate this game. I'll say it for fun sometimes, right? Because that's just for memes. But dude, I can never hate Smite with the impact that it's had on my life.
Okay.
Like, it's gonna be hard to beat a moment like that for the rest of my life. It's only downhill from here.
Attack the Gold Fury. Set up an
How the
ambush
fuck am I
here.
gonna beat the first pentakill in competitive history? For the rest of my life.
Enemy missing left. Be careful, middle. Hasta la vista, amigo. The rain shall wash them away. Oh, this will move like a chacho. Fabuloso. Oh, my riffy.
He probably has him anyway, right?
Paladin or speed maybe?
Attack the gold on my way. Oh, they hit like a baby. Behind us.
The Pyromancer has
He
arrived.
might have
Your
backed.
right tower is under attack.
Enemies have returned to base.
Your right tower is under
Damn.
attack.
Rotated for no reason, lost tower.
Your right
Smart.
tower has been destroyed.
Feels like it travels slower, he might. I'm gonna have to see it more, but you know, it definitely might be the case. I don't think I would be opposed to that either, because I do think it was very, very powerful as Smite 1. You could travel forever with that. And very fast.
Mistakes happen. Ultimate is ready. Enemies in middle lane.
Noted, you don't have cooldowns anymore. He definitely doesn't. Yeah, fucking Chronos Pendant. He's gonna nerf his damage a little bit, but he is not gonna have any cooldowns.
Paladin is left jungle.
Enemy missing right. Be careful, middle. Enemy missing right.
An enemy has been slain.
It's unfortunate he got his hold off.
Defend middle lane. Mistakes
Your
happen.
left tower is under attack.
Enemy ultimate down.
Enemy missing.
Your right tower is under attack.
Yes, I'm also mostly joking. I imagine there's gonna be moments in my life that I'll enjoy just as much as the launch tournament. Or at least in a different way.
And the rain shall wash them away. An enemy has been slain.
Enemy spotted.
I'm not gonna rotate until my ult's up. can't help but feel that Chunk is giving this way too much to me.
Okay. Mistakes happen.
It's really good for him too, but giving it to me just makes my ult much lower.
Your team has
Cooldown.
destroyed the gold
Well,
fuel.
I'm saying much, but that shit's still 100 in 2 seconds.
Gank! Enemy ultimate down! My way. Enemy ultimate down!
No beats.
He's building a bit tanky now.
Have a good time.
Retreat left lane!
Missing right.
Enemy missing middle.
Ally has been slain!
And now I can't really deal with him anymore, so I'm gonna chill. Make sure that I stay farmed. It's also a bit different. Against poke gods, I feel like it wasn't as bad as ADC in Smite 1. But now that you don't have lifesteal, it's a different situation.
The rain shall wash them away! Victory for cognitive power.
Enemy spotted. Ultimate is ready.
Your team has destroyed a left enemy tower.
Completed. Enemies have returned to base.
Be right back!
Okay.
On my way!
On my way. I will ward.
Has destroyed the pyromancer.
Definitely get some fast objectives. Just gotta get some more crit. Tragic. Really want this tower.
Enemy has been slain! Double kill! Oh, my horrific!
Your left tower is under attack.
Damn it.
Shut down! Hasta la vista, amigo! The rain shall wash them away!
Dude, Cubit's level 13. Is that a support Cubit? It is, okay. That makes more sense. I keep trying to find myself like looking for some action in my lane here, but like, his cooldowns are just too low. He's just gonna outpoke me. Holy shit! I didn't realize they were struggling that much.
Enemy missing right.
Your middle tower is under attack. Your middle tower has been destroyed.
An enemy has been slain.
Attack.
Enemy ultimate down.
Completed.
Fabuloso.
Mistakes happen.
Where is he?
Your middle tower is under attack.
I'll defend right lane.
Aladdin! Whoa! How, man? This god is crazy.
On my way.
I did not think I was in danger there. I really didn't. I'm glad I beached. Holy moly. Yo, we're just gonna ignore the chuck.
Oh, you move like a
Completed. Take the
fire giant.
That's me. And I dashed into it.
Completed.
Your team has destroyed the pyramid.
And the rain shall wash them away.
Man,
Your left tower is under
why does Fijan always get stolen?
Yeah.
That's too bad.
Mistakes happen.
Your team has destroyed a middle enemy tower. Your left tower is under attack.
Enemy missing left.
Ultimate is ready. Oh, what a shame. Have a good time.
I don't know why I thought her ult was down. So now that was a pretty bad idea. All of a sudden.
Save yourself.
We've entered. That one's definitely mostly on me. I thought I saw her ult in mid, that's why I went in. Because if she ults, I don't really have any threat. Well, as long as Aladdin isn't there. Turns out that boar still lived, and he fucked me up.
Your middle tower is under attack.
Save yourself. I'll get you.
The enemy team has destroyed the gold Fury. Your left tower is under attack.
Motherfucker.
Enemy ultimate down. Attack.
Is ready.
Attack.
On my way.
I should have waited for Thor and picked him up with me.
Ultimate is ready.
Attack!
I'm on it.
Okay.
Double kill. The rain shall wash them away.
Your left tower is under attack.
Should have waited turning around. Fuck. I'm not even sure how that went so badly, too. We should have just gotten Cupid there for free. I think Agni just dashed in and instantly got Artemis ulted as well. That was a bit rough. We're definitely playing this badly right now.
Your middle tower is under attack.
Like, we should be winning this. Like, it can't just be these two guys killing us. That ain't good.
Your middle tower is under attack. The enemy team has destroyed the pyramid.
I think I might have to go for some kind of...
Your right tower is under attack.
I don't even know, actually. Maybe a Hydra's? What could I go with? Just Lenient Bow, probably, actually, when I think about it.
Enemy ultimate down.
For now, I'm just gonna save up for my starter.
Group up. Mistakes happen.
They hit like a baby.
It's unfortunate that he still had beats up.
Enemies in middle lane.
Yes. Chase the enemy.
I might actually go magic defense. That wouldn't even be that bad of an idea. Because he is by far going to be my main issue.
Be right back. Drinking is for the cause.
But at the same time, that wouldn't help against the Artemis of the Chuck. Man, maybe a Runeforged. Though it's kind of late for that. Wouldn't be bad for my messes at least.
Yes. Okay.
They might have some deep words.
War of the Fire Giant!
We got Aladdin, that's good. But what can we do with this? Pretty much nothing, I guess.
Enemy has been slain.
Another victory for
Yeah,
cognitive
go.
power.
Don't run! All doubt washed away. You are weak.
Group up.
On my way. Attack the fire! Set up an ambush here.
Ultimate is ready.
Enemies behind
Rain
us.
shall wash them
Huge.
away.
Fire giant.
Attack!
Boys, go in. We don't want to do fire when they're watching us. That worked out, I guess.
Thunderbolts of light.
I was surprised when I was the only one that actually went in there. When Thor was in the air.
Go.
But oh well. Guess I can't complain if it works out.
Get. Enemies incoming.
Just push mid, boys. Definitely just push mid.
I'm on it.
He missed.
Enemies incoming.
It definitely hasn't been going very well for me specifically in these last few fights. I generally just land or get one-shot by something. It was unfortunate that beats were still on cooldown there though. For a few seconds. Couldn't really get out of the Kraken in time.
Ultimate is ready.
Save yourself.
Your team has destroyed a left enemy tower.
Well, beats are up this time.
Enemy has been slain.
I don't know, my bad, I guess. I can't play the fucking game. Artemis just shits on me. And there I just fucked up.
That's too bad.
One thing I will say though, it feels like Apollo does way less damage than it used to. Because that was a fully like hit ult. Wait, can I see? Like 540? Not that that's bad necessarily, but that was a fully... I'm pretty sure I didn't miss a single tick, right? That's pretty low damage for what it was in Smite 1. With a full damage build. But I suppose this build also probably has pretty low power compared to this like an ADC Smite 1 build. Or you probably would have... Like what is that one item called? The crit item? Fail not? Like you don't really have something like that at the moment. 40, 30, 30... Oh, it's not actually that bad in terms of power. I feel like it just... What's the scaling on this? 25%? Yeah, that might be a lot less than was in Smite 1. I don't remember what it was.
I'll take one of those.
Dude, I was 8-0. Now I'm 8-5. I gotta shape the fuck up. What am I doing?
Okay.
Sorry.
Save yourself. On my way.
Yeah, that's not really much I think we can do about that.
Sorry. Like a jaguar.
Follow me.
Fuck, I was waiting for him to get closer, that sucks. He gets in mess range, he dies.
The enemy team has destroyed the pyramids. Your right tower has been destroyed. Your right tower is under attack.
Oh, he's the wrong team. I am sorry. Retreat. In range, shall wash them away. Retreat.
Nice job.
Both teams are just inting. No one can end.
Unfortunate. Follow me. Follow me.
Completed. Nice job.
It's tough. We're getting the picks, but we're just not able to really get anything out of it. Well, at least I did something for once.
Gank right lane.
On my way.
Yeah!
Chase the enemy.
Enemy spotted. Enemy spotted.
Fire giant.
Your right phoenix is under attack.
On my way. Enemies incoming. Be careful.
Ultimate is done.
Your team has destroyed the fire tower.
Defend middle lane.
Okay. I'll attack right lane. Wait.
Attack right tower.
Be right back.
Attack the fire giant.
Yes.
That'll come in handy.
I don't really know who I would take with me. I actually think the Apollo ult is a bit strange in a game like this, because there's no one I should take with me when I land. I don't, like, Agni shouldn't be on top of them.
Your team has
Like,
destroyed
Thor
the
is
pyramids.
probably the only one I would take with me. Like, Bari and Thor, I feel like, should not be on top of them.
Enemies in right lane.
Group up.
Your team has destroyed a right enemy tower.
Ultimate is ready.
Right. Divine Rune has that weird lightning thing now, doesn't it?
Ward here!
Okay.
Fabuloso!
감사합니다.
Nice job.
That was just Barry one-shotting, honestly. That was well played.
Victory.
Purple orb showing up. No damage this game. Though, in my defense, I didn't fight Chug at all in the laning phase, pretty much. Maybe once, I think. Yeah, I did kill him once, actually, but... Yeah, that was some big deaths on this team. As much as I did look forward to Apollo as well, like, I'm definitely having fun with him. I'm gonna start in that sentence made it sound like I'm not, but what I was really looking forward to was the aspect. So I don't know how much I'll be playing today, because I was mostly looking forward to that part of him. So we'll see how long I actually play. I don't really mind just doing a chill short stream. Like, I'm already... I got Apollo twice, so I'm happy. I'm so happy. And both games were, like, you know, good games. I imagine there's going to be a time where I don't get Apollo, where I need to play something else, and I'm just back to where I'm usually at. What's the aspect? I mean, I don't think it's final necessarily, but you can see it in practice mode. The aspect is essentially like a tanking aspect. His one starts scaling with health, max health, only, and the Audacity stacks, instead of giving you attack speed when they reach 10, they give you another, like, 1. So you can have up to 3 ones, but they only obviously scale with health. So you essentially have to go for like a full health. Like, oh yeah, the 2 also gives a shield, which is, you know, I don't like that, but it is, you know, adds to the tank aspect of him. So you just can't become more of a frontline. I do believe those are the only changes. But they do change the way he plays quite a bit, I think. Yeah, more shields. Definitely needed that. But what I'm mainly excited about is the fact that you have multiple ones. They will do significantly less damage, because they obviously only scale with health, from items specifically, not your overall max health. So, not when you level up and all that bullshit. Just items. So I have a build in mind I want to try out, that I've been thinking of, specifically because of Apollon. I mean, I'm okay with just playing him as he is, you know, like I've been doing. Just play Apollo and go for him like a hybrid tanky-ish build. I like that. I actually like that a lot more than playing just crit in this game. I actually found the other one way more fun. Yeah, Thebes is a part of that build I'm thinking of too. It only makes sense if health is what you're going with. But you also can't just go health, because it's only 15% scaling on it. That's not a lot. Like, if you stack full health, I've already checked. If you stack literally full health through items, you're gonna do like 600 damage with it. Like, and this wasn't like, you know, a dummy without any protections, essentially. So, to a tank, that's gonna be nothing. You're not gonna be able to damage any frontliners with a build like that. Not really your job either. If you just go on like a backline, you might be able to do something, but that's exactly why I want to try it. I want to try it in an actual game. You can always check numbers and shit in practice, but ultimately you don't really know how it's going to function unless you're against other people. But how you're stacking Thieves and solo, you just let the minions last it. You just don't last that shit. You do the opposite. of what you would do in Smite 1 when you stack normal stuff. Do not last it. Which is pretty easy with Apollo, honestly, because your 1 does not ever do enough damage to one-shot the archers in Smite 2, it felt like. So that's not a problem. They'll just be 1 HP. The only issue is you might risk denying yourself a bit too much in the early game, because if you're getting outpushed, which you will obviously be if you're not trying to hit the creeps all that much, then the tower is gonna hit them, and then you're gonna lose gold. So Thieves is gonna be an item you want to build later, not early. Yeah, you definitely don't want to rush it, I think. Maybe a second, there's a chance you want to do it second, but I do think, like, in that build, I kind of have a Golden Blade in mind, because that's an item that gives you health as well, for some fucking reason. 200 health on Golden Blade. It will give you the early damage, and it's going to give you some HP. So overall, it's just the best, I think, starting item you can go with that Apollo build. Even if you're being a tank, essentially. Well, you're not really being a tank, you're being a frontline. I do think that's a difference. I think Hades is a frontline, but he's not a tank. So anyway, I'm looking forward to the aspect. And I'm a bit sad that it's not here today, but that just means I'll play again. Well, I'll pretty much 100% stream again on Friday, because I really want to try the aspect. So hopefully Apollo isn't broken and everyone's going to start banning him, because then I probably won't be able to play him. But from what I also just can see, he is not broken, but there is obviously the clear aspect of him where he rotates very, very easily. And that could be enough for some people to just ban him. Because even in games like this that I just played, one of the big strengths I had overall before I started inting was the fact that I could just ult over and my opponent can't do anything about it. There's the same thing with Athena solo. Like, there is an absolute gigantic advantage with that. I think Apollo's weakness, in a way, is dealing with something that is very good push. Because if he ever rotates, which he really wants to do for the most part, unless you're just playing split pushing, but I mean, that's not really going to work early. Then, if you ever rotate, you're going to lose a lot of shit for it. Because if you get something like an Amma, if she's good, or like another ADC, people could run like Uller, whatever the case may be. You're going to lose a lot of shit for rotating. I think that's the best way to really deal with it. Because that incentivizes me to not rotate. Because I'm simply taking a risk by rotating, by doing that. You got in the game? Oh well. Guess I'm just gonna sit here then. And my 7-minute queue. Yeah, I might be getting too much SR at this point. I don't know how many people are above 5k now, but I do believe that with those 2 wins that I just got are above 5k. Three people connecting, that's great. How high are you now, Ed? You in the 4Ks? Yeah, I have a pretty good team. I'll take this. Well, who the hell are we against, though? Sin in 1. So that's somewhere in 3Ks, I guess? I don't know by name. I don't know where they all are. I always just go by SR. I don't remember all that specifically. I kind of only remember like the top ones, because you know, I know 5K is obviously Demigod. And then Deity and 5.5, even though that's not really a thing at the moment. I do wonder when they'll fix the rank system so that it actually makes sense. Whoops. Because there is just nothing above 5k now, even though Deity still exists.
Select
Um,
your god.
Apollo. No, they got Apollo. Oh well. What does one pick into the Apollo then? And Aladdin's open. I guess I'll pick that. Can't you rank, by the way? Yeah, try and restart your game. Either try go into practice and then back out of practice, or log out and log back in. That usually fixes it if the queue is glitching out. Happens somewhat often. Oh shit, that was just a straight hole there. Goddamn. Unfortunate, we got someone connecting as well now. Oh well. Back in the queue then. Can't change game mode? That's weird. Did you try restarting the whole game? Surely that should fix it. Could just be a new bug as well in this patch. It's always hard to tell. Restart worked, does it? That's good then. No, they're tapping out. Oh. Damn. Rip my momentum. I wasn't fast enough. I realized the Apollo was open and we have first pick. I should have said something. That being said, I don't think Agni is a bad pick though.
Select your god.
What did I pick before again? Right. Aladdin. I'll just do that again. This does feel like a poke matchup. And if this might be... I don't know, I could see this being an Apollo solo, we'll see. But if it's not... Okay, it might not be. The pick Bracken. Why do I even need sparks in this game mode? Just endless. I'm not buying any items. Toa, stop. Let's see. Yeah, okay, so it's probably gonna be Apollo solo. I would imagine.
A little something extra.
It's not really a matchup I think I'm gonna win early.
Is busy.
Don't really have the damage for that. And Sav on that Raw? Damn. I was getting hypnotized by the game. Yeah. I think haste is very hypnotizing when you're at like at max speed. So me too. Does Nick always use Sav now? Then he might. I don't know. Are they duo queuing? Is that what this means? Whatever that is, I guess not. There really should be a way for you to tell in game whether someone is duo queuing or not. The duo queue very often, okay. Do we have a duo queue? Maybe I don't know. I don't know people. And I don't know the people that know people. Winter will be. That makes sense, I guess. Yeah, they weren't the same team last game as well. That would make sense. The Winter Capri, though. What a special occasion.
Come here, kitty. To me.
Ow.
Record.
Be careful left.
Do not fret. Come here, kitty.
No, I missed the fucking creep. Damn it. Yeah, I just gotta sit back. Just has better fight ability than I do at the moment.
Your left tower is under attack. Your
Yeah, I'll
right
back.
tower is under attack.
First blood.
I'll grab an early back.
Thanks.
I'm just glad I'm not into Cabragan, honestly. Cabragan would have been such a boring matchup. Probably would have had a higher chance of winning the early game, but at least Apollo will have a bigger chance of winning the
To me,
mid game
ally has been slain.
and just more. I guess what do you call it, like fightability.
Slain.
Yeah, Fenrir is pretty scary as well.
Enemy ultimate down. Recall. Let's go. To me. To me, Genie.
Did they remove a lot of like the top of the map? Something feels off just looking around.
To me.
Like there's like trees missing or some shit. Like rocks, I don't know. Something feels just different and with my eyes looking around.
Gank left.
Like on top of blue, for example.
Recall.
It just feels a bit barren.
To me, Genie. And the rain shall wash them away.
Damn it. Had to try.
Recall.
Just grab this.
On my way. Okay. To me, Genie.
The gods that didn't have TP before in solo are just way more viable as well because you don't have like TP isn't a thing. Like the active itself, or the relic I should say.
To me.
So now that you don't have to buy that, you just have a much easier time in general. Because not having TP, and you will already like getting pressured in lane into something like, I don't know, let's say like a chug, like last game. When I was playing Apollo, he kept out pressuring me. If I didn't have the ability to TP back, I would have gotten cooked even harder.
Recall.
Would have gotten so zoned.
An enemy has been slain. To me, Genie. Like a jaguar. Oh, they hit like a baby.
Oh, that's definitely something missing on blue. It's weird. I can't put a finger on it.
Follow them. Enemy missing right. Cancel that. Recall.
Did not mean to press it that early. I should just dash away earlier. I keep getting extra poke because I'm just holding on to it for no reason.
Middle tower is under attack.
Recall.
Your right tower is under attack. Be careful.
How much do I need? I forgot.
Enemy missing.
I'm sticking around.
On my way. On my way. To me.
Your middle tower is under attack.
Gank. The rain shall wash them away. Enemy missing right. Be careful left. To me, Ginny. An enemy has been slain. The rain shall wash them away. The gold fury. Enemy missing right. Be careful.
What is enemy ultimate incoming, guys? What is that one called again? Okay, VBA. I gotta remember it. I'm so bad at remembering that one specifically, and it's very useful.
Your team has destroyed the gold fury.
To me.
Your middle tower is under attack.
Right. Recall.
Your middle tower is under attack.
It's a building. Devos, okay. Didn't try that. I also kind of want to try Transcendence build for obvious reasons. Don't think I need it though.
To me, Ginny.
Your right tower is under attack.
Let's settle this. Power them. Enemy has been slain.
I always just try for my ult, but so far, Into the Lamp is not
Has arrived.
Into the Lamp.
The rain shall wash them away. Enemy spotted. To me, Ginny.
Still got all my wishes left.
Recall.
Your middle tower is under attack.
To me, Ginny.
Your team has destroyed a left enemy tower.
Do more, I guess. Try to see how that works. Like the obvious one is obviously probably. But if I'm just going mainly for like a poke build, I don't know who I can actually go on now. Like Ra and Neve late game for sure without really being in too much trouble. But I haven't done just a pure poke like with Aladdin 1 for late game in a while. It just feels wrong not having Poly on Aladdin. I'll try Doom up first. Pretty sure Blue had more trees on the right. Yeah, I feel that way too. Like something's definitely missing. I don't think it's bad though. Like for visibility reasons, I think it's fine that they removed some stuff. But now I just need to adjust to it again. Because I did like how it looked before. It was pretty. Now it's pretty, but it was still pretty, but just different.
Tokens and pictures to add to my collection.
It's just a little different.
On my way.
Your right tower is under attack.
Oh, you move like a jaguar. Ooh.
Very chill solo lane so far.
To me. Record. Let's go, Jimmy. Into the round. Come on, let's settle this.
What a god. You see how I did everything twice? It's so balanced.
Tank left lane.
It's like playing Morrigan.
Ready.
Time renewal.
To me.
Fuck me, man. Didn't think Kip fucking Fenrir was here. Why would he even be here? I wasn't there in the first place. Well, screw me.
Your right tower is under attack.
Enemy spotted.
Changed the Pyromancer pit. I think they also changed gold a bit, I think. Like, added more texture to the, like, the rock parts, I think. Something... I also have Phoenixes as well. I'm pretty sure it's something new on the Phoenixes too. I do think it's cool that they keep, like, adding some cool textures and stuff. Somehow we still got that, and I do not know how.
The Gold Fury.
The rain will wash them away.
Your right tower has been destroyed. Your middle tower is under attack.
The ultimate down.
Fucking hell, man. Of course he gets... Whatever. I'm so close to just reviving now. But that would be so stupid. Should never have dashed. Oh, thank God that we got gold, because we just lost 2 fucking towers in rain. That's really bad for me. Now I have nothing to hide behind. I really thought I could make it in time and still defend the tower. So the fact that I dashed just became terrible.
Record.
And I kind of accidentally, in the process, just wished. Because I wasted my other wish now. Now I can no longer get an extra gold. still have 2 levels though on Apollo here. I'm definitely not in a bad spot.
Into the lab!
Destroy the right enemy tower.
Oh, my-horrific!
Your middle tower is under attack.
You have slain an enemy!
Your left tower is under attack.
Fire giant, have fun!
Your left tower. Your middle tower is under attack. Your team has destroyed the fire tower. Your left tower is under attack. Your middle tower is under attack. Your middle tower is destroyed.
See if I can defend this.
Enemies in
Cannot.
left lane.
No one else is rotating.
Your left tower has
Recall!
An enemy has been slain! Group up!
Enemy ultimate down!
Enemy missing left.
Attack middle tower!
To me! Power them!
Your team has destroyed a middle enemy tower.
To me, Genie!
Attack!
On my way!
Yes!
Retreat!
Okay.
Your team has destroyed a middle enemy tower.
Be careful.
Need beats.
Attack the gold fury. You got thunderstruck!
Recall!
Retreat! Enemies incoming. Be right back. Be careful.
To me, Genie!
Let's get Rod next.
A little something extra, just in case the Genie is busy.
Group up. Attack the gold fury.
To me! Enemy missing right. Power them!
Enemies in left lane.
Recall!
Your team has destroyed the Gold Fury.
Group up. Attack left lane.
Enemies in the right lane.
Yeah, Neith is just baiting. Ain't no way I'm gonna fall for that. Not this time.
Attack, Fire Giant!
Record! Enemies incoming!
Your left Phoenix is under attack. Bask in celestial. Your left Phoenix has been destroyed. By divine renewal.
No one backed? Fucking hell, man.
Your Titan is under attack.
Record! On my way.
All by cosmic force. Bask in celestial restoration.
Let's go!
Illuminated light.
The rain shall wash them away.
Be right back.
I'm watching for that Apollo ult.
I must
So is
slip
Capri.
away quickly. Thanks. Tokens and tinctures to add to my collection.
I guess Thor can defend, he needs the XP as well.
Attack Fire Giant!
Ward the fire giant. To me.
The enemy team has destroyed the Fire Giant.
That's so annoying, man.
Enemy has
Damn,
been
huge.
slain.
You have that spark of magic in you.
Ultimate is ready.
No, man! People can't dagger my team today! Press that shit! Maybe it's bugged. In the last game he did say he was trying to press it. I don't know if that's, you know... Holy attack speed. Nimble ring. Makes sense. What is the Odin you got? Is that a name we know? Keegan? Oh. Doesn't he usually play alright?
Is under attack.
At least I don't think I've witnessed him, like, trolling per se.
Your right Phoenix is under attack.
Sab is such a big problem for us right now.
The Pyromancer.
Record.
Be careful, left my way!
To me, Ginny. Ultimate incoming!
Retreat! Group up!
Enemy ultimate down!
The enemy team has destroyed the Gold Fury.
Record! Enemies in the right lane. A little something extra, just in case.
Where's
the
someone
game
back at
is
least?
To me, Genie!
Fuck, that didn't reach. I was trying to be out of range. So they couldn't see me.
On my way!
And the rain shall wash them away.
Fuck, man.
Enemy has been slain.
Into the left!
Would have thought his ult to be down.
Enemy
Be
spotted!
careful.
Ally has been slain. Okay.
To me, Genie!
Shut down. Impossible.
Your left Phoenix is under attack.
Attack!
Your left Phoenix has been destroyed.
Go!
Slain an enemy.
Should have probably expected that was what he was gonna do. That's so annoying.
Record! To me! Come on, then, Genie!
Completed. Left lane.
The enemy team has destroyed the pyramids. Your right Phoenix is under attack. Enemy missing.
Didn't even realize I had that much gold on me. I'm sorry for being quiet, guys. I'm just really focused on this one. It's like one wrong move and I'm pretty much dead. But I have saved my revive in case I really need it.
The rain shall wash them away.
Drop it low.
Defend middle lane. Fortunate, really.
Be right back.
Fabuloso.
To me,
Well, that's pretty bad.
No, it's not possible. Double kill. Enemy has been slain.
Thought it was alone. That's on me.
Attack middle lane.
Middle lane, on my way.
I could revive, but like, I don't know. I don't want to waste it. I don't think we end here anyway. So, no, I just think we get a free Phoenix, and I'll revive without any issues. I don't want to choose a bad moment to use it. I'd rather go for a risky play and then have it pay off, or you know, if I screw it up, I can just revive and nothing will happen out of it. Go for a big, like, gotta yoink Sav. He needs to go. I'm waiting for this 3k pot.
Tokens and tinctures to add to my collection.
I don't know what gold I just got, but I'll take it.
To me!
The Pyromancer has arrived. Your team has destroyed the Pyromancer.
Attack right lane.
On my way!
Your team has destroyed a right enemy tower.
To me, Genie. Enemy spotted. Save yourself. Attack fire. Left lane. Defend left lane.
I'll
I'll
defend.
defend.
Attack.
Enemy missing left.
Group up. Right.
Enemy missing left. Be careful right.
The rain shall wash them away.
Enemies in left lane. Recall.
Into the left.
Your left Phoenix is under attack. Your left Phoenix has been
I must
destroyed.
slip away quickly. Enemy
Like
ultimate
invented
down.
Idiot.
Your team has destroyed the fire giant.
Excuse me? He just went, what?
Enemy ultimate incoming.
Fenrir just disappeared!
The enemy team has
What the fuck was
destroyed
that?
Fury.
Attack left lane.
Oh, he took Apollo ult? Ah, dude, I gotta get some better animation for that shit. He just fucking poof! It was gone.
Enemy spotted.
He poofed the fuck out of there.
Your team has destroyed a middle enemy Phoenix.
I should have just tried to land on him as well. Inside.
Destroyed a left enemy tower.
I actually got so confused when Fenrir disappeared that I thought he had Helm of Darkness. It's like there's only one way this guy stealths. But whatever.
The enemy team has destroyed the Pyromancer. Your middle phoenix is under attack. Your middle phoenix is under attack. Your middle phoenix has been destroyed.
I'll defend.
Your titan is under attack.
Recall. Come on then. Let's settle this. Let's go, Jimmy.
Very strong. An enemy has been slain. Fabuloso. Oh, yeah. Juga Thunderstorm.
Dude, that's such a cheesy little backdoor they tried with there. Goddamn.
Thanks.
Victory.
Actually surprised I ended up getting out of that. Damn, 20? That's crazy. Well, at least I did something in the end. I definitely made just too many mistakes in this game. Like a lot of close calls. I can already feel it getting really hot. So the stream won't be much longer. Because I really just don't want to start streaming and sweating. And in about an hour or so... Actually no, it just started I think. The sun is going to hit my apartment now and it's going to get really, really hot in here. And then I don't want to be here. So I'm going to leave my apartment. Definitely expect less streams during the summer. I might stream anyway if I'm really bored, but I'm really not a Heat person. I've said it a few times on stream as well. I just won't be in the mood to stream really, because I'm just either gonna be tired, because it's just so hot that I guess comfortable. I feel like I'm just under a blanket. I want to go sleep. I'm way too fucking tired to play games, or I just don't want to put on a headset because you know, kind of adds to the heat wearing something on your head. So there's just a chance that I don't have the time. I'd just rather be outside, do something else. Shit. That was too much stuff. I'm very satisfied with just Apollo though so far, because he doesn't feel broken. Like even seeing Nika played here, I do think Apollo just is there. And I think that's great. Finally, maybe we have a god that just releases and is just balanced. You don't need to do anything about it. They're just now in the game and they're not banned or necessarily picked. They're gonna be there. I do think though, in a team setting, he will be broken with that +1 to his ult. How would they break Apollo? That's the problem. They even mentioned it too when they originally started talking about him. He's very easy to break because he has a very solid kit. You gotta be very careful on what you actually give him because he has everything. He's such a good all-rounder. The only thing I guess he doesn't have necessarily is like burst. He doesn't have any burst. But he has great defense, he has great escapability, he's got a pretty good amount of damage. So what are you actually gonna give him? That's also why the only thing they did was give him like a +1 to the ult that doesn't give him any damage or defense, it simply adds another rotation to his ultimate. And I thought that was a great idea, personally. But I do think that shit will be very powerful in actual team play. Where you can communicate on what to do with it. I mentioned that in the last stream as well. Because of that change, I feel like he's almost best in mid. Maybe he's not, but I don't know, man. In mid is usually where you have two people around you. The jungler and the support can just suddenly gank into like a side lane. I think that's crazy. Just like think about it. Suddenly the solo or the duo lane is just getting like usually I would imagine it being duo because otherwise you might lose gold early, but dude, in solo, if I get 4-man ganked because of an Apollo, I'm gonna be so pissed. And usually, if I get pissed about something like that, that usually means it's kind of good, you know. I hate it because it works. Probably decent jungle too. Maybe. I don't know how he compares to junglers in Smite 2 compared to Smite 1. Like, I don't see Apollo having a great time into something like Thor. And that's even like was generally considered a pretty decent matchup for Apollo. I think ability damage wise, he feels a lot less than Smite 2. Or Smite 1. Like early game, granted I was against the Chalk, but I felt like I wasn't doing a whole lot of damage. But someone might just come along and prove me wrong. Like I don't think he's gonna be bad in jungle by any means, especially in ranked. But do I think he's gonna be? I don't know. I guess it's hard to say because he was never really like a top jungler even in competitive, but he's always something somewhat good in ranked to do. I could see it now that you mention it. I'll take it back. Could definitely see an Apollo jungle. I'm just excited to see how the aspect actually is and how it feels. Because I could see the aspect maybe making him a bit OP. Maybe. But that's just because tanks aren't that good right now. I think into a tank build, I don't think he would be as good. But I think if you're stacking health on Apollo, it might be really good into a backliner, depending on what you're against. I don't know. We'll see them. Alright, mine's a pick. What am I looking at here? Hercules, Odin, Apollo. If this is Nika again, I imagine it's gonna be Apollo solo. And somehow these two are gonna be like jungle and other shit. Do I just go Afro? Like a piece of shit? No, I'm not really feeling that. Let's try. I'll play Mordred. Just the Mordred. Maybe I go for a bit of a more of a damaging build rather than full tank. I'm gonna have to go defense early either way though. Even more so if I'm against Apollo. I actually think this is a terrible matchup the more I think about it now. That mess is gonna fuck Mordred up. But I suppose I'll find out if that is a power solo. No, it doesn't seem like it is. Alright, good luck, guys. Let's have a good one. Hercules. Okay. I have not dealt with Hercules in a long time. We got Vivas on Ymir though, how could we lose? Actually, looking at it, I'm gonna be ganked by an Odin. Assuming this is gonna be a... I mean, I'm probably either way I'm gonna have to deal with Odin and Hercules. Which is not gonna be very fun on Mordred. So much for wanting to go damage. That shit ain't happening now. Sunder or Shell? I think I have to go Shell.
I require one of everything.
No, they definitely added more texture to the... Or maybe not more, but they added a different texture. Because this stands out to me so much. At least from compared to last patch. Something feels different. That's cool, yeah, we'll see a bot aspect as well here, after the buff. Should be a lot better now. Yeah, and then Nick has Zav Q. It's fine, we won last game. I'm sure we can do it again. This time they have Simsos as well, though. It's basically Winter and Wolvie versus Nika and Zav in these games. The rest of us are just fillers.
Minions have spawned.
Favorite role? Sav's... might be Sav's favorite role. That dude plays fucking everything. Sav's insane. Not level 2. Is he gonna be level 2? Yep.
Enemy spotted.
Enemy missile kill!
Enemy spotted.
Scrap blue before the spawns. So I can potentially get pressure in lane. Just grab a free Warhorn. course he is. Sev's gonna babysit his partner. Yeah. Alright. Guess I should have expected something like that. Just fucking sucks that Hercules also got the kill for that.
Enemy missing left.
That's really gonna suck for me. I should have expected it.
Your left tower is under attack.
I should have expected it.
Be careful, middle.
So much for pressure.
Careful, middle.
Nothing you can't handle. Enemy missing middle.
Your right tower is under attack. Your middle tower is under attack. Your right tower is under attack. Your right tower is under attack.
Enemy missing. On my way.
Good luck, dearie.
Enemy ultimate down.
Ally is slain.
Centuries of waiting. I will not Your left be denied. Tower is under attack.
Hmm.
Your
He does have a full build. There's not really much I can do about it right now. He just wins this automatically.
On my way.
I'm gonna stick around though.
Ultimate is ready.
Thanks.
Your right tower is under attack.
Looks not bad for you.
I'm kind of just building what I'm used to though. Probably shouldn't be going mystical now.
And the rain shall wash them away.
Sorry.
Your middle tower is under attack. Your left tower is under attack.
I'm so far behind XP after that first kill. That was such a annoyingly timed gank.
Oh, you move like a jaguar. Ooh.
That was clutch.
Your middle tower is under attack. Your right tower is under attack.
Oh, you move like a jaguar. Ooh.
Oof. I don't know what's happening in duo, but it ain't looking good.
Be careful.
Enemy ultimate down.
Probably should buy the same thing. He also heals a lot. Doing that again.
Your middle tower.
No, man. I'm guessing Baku's just sits in duo?
Enemy has been slain.
Either that or he's just being zoned or something.
Is under attack.
But the match ain't
And
over
walks
yet.
up anyway. I'm not sure. But it's gonna be fed up hollow.
Enemy missing left. Your right tower is under attack.
That works out. Anti-healing came in clutch already. Actually, maybe it's Odin that sits in duo. That could also definitely be the case.
Ultimate is ready.
Your middle tower is under attack.
I almost felt bad for you. On my way.
Completed.
Be careful.
Enemy ultimate down.
Behind us.
Your left tower is under attack.
Kinda surprising that I actually didn't get caught there, I think. I didn't think that I was gonna get out.
Pyromancer has arrived.
I thought they were actually going to block it. I know they tried, but I thought Odin was actually in front of them. Enough, at least, to the point where I was gonna get blocked. I'll take it.
Nothing we can't handle.
Good reaction.
What cooldown is this? 45 seconds? It's not bad.
Retreat. Enemies at the Gold Fury.
The enemy team has destroyed the Gold Fury. Got mana.
On my way. Be right back.
Walk it off. Your middle tower is under attack.
You're not GM, are you?
Jesus Christ, the police!
Back left lane.
Christ. I for some reason thought that was my Merlin, so I just ignored him completely. That's crazy. But at least we get one for one. Damn, I don't know why I thought he was mine. I was just standing in his shit.
Attack left tower.
Miss Mail was bad though.
Your middle tower is under attack.
Yeah. She's startled.
I would have you eternally by my side.
Well done.
I'll defend middle lane.
Thanks!
Be careful. Enemies incoming.
How demeaning. I'll attack left line.
You got both.
Right lane.
On my way! Group up!
Can you come?
Tower.
No beats on Apollo.
Follow me!
Got a man up.
Hercules remains to be just as annoying as always.
Enemy has
Once he gets a few items online. This fucking god just feels like he doesn't have cooldowns and he just has two of the most annoying abilities in the game when you combine them.
Sinister and sharp. How wicked.
I do not have any cooldown in this build though, which is kind of bad.
Walk it off.
the rain shall wash them away.
Be right back.
Torment your soul.
Look how tanky we are. It's gonna matter absolutely nothing at all the second we go into fighting. Hey Cherry, thank you for the raid, man. Hope you had a good stream.
Follow me.
Hope you're enjoying the patch, assuming it's out for you as well. I assume it
can
raises
go
everybody's
lowering
just
mid.
globally, right? It's not region based.
But the match ain't over yet!
The enemy enemy team has destroyed the Pyromancer. Your right tower.
I think I heard something.
Ultimate is ready.
Justify Jen making movements, I guess.
Your team has destroyed the Gold Fury.
Enemy missing left. On my way. I'll gank right lane.
Attack!
Be careful left.
Nothing we can't handle. Enemy missing.
How unexpected.
Not that we need it. My watch.
Completed. I almost felt bad for you.
That sucks. But the match ain't over yet.
Attack me.
A kiss for luck. Not that we
Let's see building anyway. He's just full damage pretty much. Let's go Soul Stone. Soul Gem, rather.
On my way.
Your right tower has been destroyed. Your right tower is under attack.
Could get tower here, but hopefully
Attack.
On my way. On my way.
Enemy has been slain. The rain shall wash them away.
Not that we need it. I got you, fam. Not that we need it.
Your team has destroyed the fire giant. Your right tower is under attack.
Match ain't over yet.
I don't know how I'm supposed to land my dagger on this. I have so much HP that I need to perfect time that shit.
Your team has destroyed the Pyromancer. Your team has destroyed a middle enemy tower. under attack. Enemies in left lane. Your team has destroyed the Gold Fury. Your left tower is under attack.
Really like to get 20.
Group up. How defeat.
You have my apologies.
Attack right.
On my way.
Can it be a game?
Yeah, I'll take you over.
On my way.
Odin is with him, right? That's funny.
Yeah, it just disappears. There needs to be some kind of animation for that.
We can push, we have a lot of sustain in the half cage. Just keep pushing.
Attack middle lane. I almost felt bad for you.
All beats. Didn't even realize I was tagging the Phoenix for that long. My god, that shit was hitting me for almost 800.
Never forget.
Ultimate is down.
Attack middle lane.
Ultimate is down.
No. Damn, he was 1 HP.
I think we just do all them up.
Actually, I might have gotten him if I pressed my knee, man. I don't know if that was up at the time.
Eternally by my side.
How much do I have? I'm not really that tanky. I don't feel like this item would do anything for me.
For luck. Not that we need it.
This one, though, 25% of your health, you gain 15%. Still, I don't have that much. I like the cooldown, though. Maybe I'll just try and buy it because it's new. Where's the last item? Wasn't there one more? You know, maybe just do Boar. Whatever. Boar is just better. And it gives me another way to initiate and escape. Why buy anything else? Give me more health. Because I do not have enough.
I'll attack the fire giant.
We're gonna go first. So they don't trade.
Yeah, I'll stay around mid so I can just keep it on fire.
I'll defend the Apollo.
Your team has destroyed the Gold Fury. Your right tower is under attack.
To here. I mean, it has.
Your right tower.
Yeah, let's see if we can get him.
They're ulting together. Just go Rook of G. I'm pushing the wave and TPing.
He's out of mana now. They're landing around red.
It's fine, I'm just... They won't get the Phoenix anymore.
Your team has destroyed the Pyromancer.
On my way.
Your team has destroyed the Fire Giant.
Attack left lane.
How exhilarating!
Yeah.
Destroyed a left enemy tower.
Apollo beats.
Yeah, I mean... You guys just trolled.
Yeah, I thought it was free. We got a free pick, but Odin just clapped us in it.
Wash them away. Enemy has been slain. Attack middle lane.
It's unfortunate. I did so
We
much
can
that
get
fight.
the
I felt
Phoenix
like,
with
well, so
the
much is a
Wolf
bit much, but I got the Apollo beats. A lot of damage to him. I didn't think Odin would just, well, should have been able to just go on me like that.
Destroyed the middle enemy Phoenix.
You have my apologies. You have my apologies. You have my apologies.
Why are we not killing him? We just jumped in.
It's fine. It's a calculated bait.
Very strong.
Yeah, that's Cap. Though I saw I'm unkillable.
Your team has destroyed a right enemy Phoenix.
If only I had power in that fight. Would have helped.
Has arrived.
I almost
I'll attack the gold fury. Attack the gold fury.
All of them.
All of them? Okay. I mean, I may catch them.
But the match ain't over
Man,
yet.
that mana's infinite. That's Cap.
Yeah, I think he was alone in this time.
attack left. Okay.
Attack left lane.
Not that we need it.
Paul beats again.
Your team has destroyed a left enemy Phoenix.
They hit like a babe.
Need healing.
Wait, I didn't press knee again.
Thanks. I got you, fam. Attack!
You have my apologies. Save yourself! Save yourself!
That sucks, but the match ain't over yet.
Yeah, we couldn't risk dying there.
A kiss for luck. Not that we'll need it.
You know how many prods I reached? I reached 450 each. 900 total prods.
With or without the item?
Like, stacking the passives.
Your team has destroyed the pyromancer.
I have like 500 base, but I get to 900.
Destroyed the fire tower.
Looking at the NAS if you guys got one. With any waves.
Your team has destroyed a middle enemy Phoenix.
Paul beats.
They're all on the horse.
Range, wash them away.
Stay linked and we're fine. This is low. We kill him.
Fuck, man. Bacchus was there full HP too. Did not realize. They're all coming to now, guys.
Yeah, just run.
Use wall.
It's fine. I think we chill. We can die at all.
Question is if I go strength or int with my build here. Because I could definitely do more int. I just go off my 3. I just have that chunk. But at the same time, everything else just scales more with strength. Ah, fuck it. This is a fun game though. Like, whether I win or lose this game has just been really fun. My score looks like ass, but all things considered, I think I played it pretty well.
The pyro
I have too many active slots. I keep mixing them up. I keep pressing the wrong ones. Contagion throws me off. I'm not used to having Contagion. Obviously, because it's new. Still.
Gank right on my way.
Martin is here. We kill the Martin. Keep chasing him.
Enemy has been slain.
Not that we need it.
Alright. Fucking Scepter of the Minion, man. That shit did save him before. It did. 22.
Victory.
I do think... Yeah. No, that was... one at the same time. Nice, man. Yeah, I felt like I did a pretty good amount of damage in this one. But yeah, I mean, Bots was obviously the big outlier in this one. Just absolutely cooking. Alright. It's really fucking hot. I can feel myself start to sweat now. And not because of the intense games. Purely because it is hot as shit. So I'm actually going to go do something else. I'm not even allowed to leave the lobby anyway. I'm stuck. But yeah. I had fun today. Apollo is cool. I'll be... I don't know if I'll be streaming until Friday, but I mean, I'll you know, we'll see. But I'll definitely be streaming on Friday because I want to do the Apollo with Aspect. So, but yeah, thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. And I will see you guys next time. Bye!